Welcome to the training, guys. We're going to talk about the first checkpoint of the sale, which is really happens in the intro and overcoming objections for the first time. Gaining trust is going to be the thing we talk about today. Just want to do a quick review though of like the structure of the front half of the sale though, and then the outcomes for each step. So walk me through just the building blocks of the front half of the sale. Intro, yep. Greeting is part of your intro. Yes, Cole, last week, one of the things I pointed out that I'm teaching a little differently right now is you'll see why, but based on this, greeting and smoke screens are all part of the intro. And mostly because the way we're going to list this out is a backwards approach of how I want to actually teach it. And you'll see what I mean here in a second. After that, what's next? Yep, intelligence gathering. So what next after that? Yep, yeah, so then you've got right here, you've got a thesis. I'm going to treat this as its own little section, but it's all part of intelligence gathering. It really sets us up for what you just said, John, which is the presentation. Yeah. So talk to me about what's in the presentation. Yep. Features and benefits, facts. It's the logical reasoning. We call this buttoning up the airtight logical case, or at least laying the foundation for an airtight logical case. And then we're going to button that up a little bit in the back half of the sale. And then what comes after the presentation? Yep. So these are our building blocks of the things that we're actually doing. What was my whole point of the last training is actually that the things that we're doing only matter based on what we're trying to accomplish with those things. So we need to take a different approach to the front half of the sale that gives you flexibility in each of these steps. So we really want to look at the sale as checkpoints to take people through rather than just checking the box. And I kind of like that way to think about it. It's like less about checking the box, more about checkpoints that you're taking the customer through. You can't move on until you've reached certain outcomes. What are we trying to accomplish in the intro? Yep, that's all about trust. Okay, what about in intelligence gathering? Yep, that's a deepen rapport. Plus you're determining how to best serve the customer, and part of that is qualifying. Yeah, so this is all about rapport plus really determining how to best serve the customer. All right, and then after, what are we doing with this thesis? Do you guys remember what I mean by thesis here? It's like thesis or hook is a different way to look at it too. Yeah, explain that to me. What are we doing here with this thesis? Yep, exactly. So once I have all the information that I need about how I can best serve the customer or how to give value to the customer, then I'm going to preface that value by stating a thesis. If you're writing a paper, a thesis is the overarching things you're going to talk about next. It's your main claim, right? What is the one thing that is true that I'm going to prove in the rest of this? And so that's what I'm going to be doing here. It's cool because once you gather enough intelligence about the customer and you've determined how you best serve them based on their situation, then now it becomes really powerful when you say, listen, based on everything that you said, I think this is going to be a really good fit. So let me tell you why. Now they're just hanging on every word. So if they weren't fully listening to you, now they're really going to be listening if they've given you the intelligence, they've actually trusted you with information, and now you're stating, listen, based on what you said, this is going to be a super good fit for you. So the thesis anchors them and builds anticipation. Okay, so then what are we doing with the presentation? What's the whole point of giving the presentation? Features, benefits, facts about the service. Why do we care about giving even the logical reasoning behind why someone should buy? Yeah. Yes, dude, exactly. It sounds like we rode in the same car together for a month and a half. And dude, we talked about this all the time, right? I remember at the beginning of riding together, you'd ask, what feature and benefit do you do for this? It just doesn't matter. It's how do you make the value of the service outweigh by 10x what they're going to pay for it? And by pay, that means the value of the dollar that they're going to spend plus the value of their time and the effort and energy they're putting in to get those features or those benefits to them. So yeah, this is really just, we're trying to make the value outweigh the cost. And the caveat here is you want to do that without giving away all the arrows in your quiver. So that's why I tend to do more like sweeping statements of why the service is so good from a holistic perspective, because then I can go prove those in the back half of the sale if I need to. And you don't end up sounding like all the competitors. Okay, now why is the close its own thing? Because you think the close, it's such a short part of the script. What is that checkpoint accomplishing? Yep, it's a temperature gauge. That's great. That's a good way to think about it. Dude, at the risk of spelling gauge wrong, the main thing is you're trying to gauge certainty. Now, it's interesting to think of the close that way because With the close, you'd think, well, I'm trying to close the deal. Yes, you are, but is that not what you're trying to do the whole sale? You're trying to close the deal. So the actual close itself should be built so that it moves the customer more down the line of certainty, and so you can truly gauge where they're at. It's forcing them to make a decision, and they'll tell you yes or no in a way that tells you exactly how they feel about the sale, about what you've explained so far. So really, those are the things we're trying to accomplish. And if you guys can view what you're doing in terms of what you're trying to accomplish rather than like the things to do along the way, it's way easier to sell at a very high level. Because remember what I told you guys last time, this type of training is not your 4-a-day sales training. 4-a-day sales training is being reasonably confident and having a good introduction and then just walking around and knocking every door and talking to every customer. That's it. That's all you have to do, give 4 a day. So if you only worked on your intro all summer, you'd sell 4 accounts a day. But what this does is allows you to get to that 8 to 10 to 12 a day level. That's very easy to attain once you can have the flexibility because you know what you're trying to do at every level of the sale. So if I don't have trust, then I know I'm not thinking like, oh, I need to do my intro again. I'm just thinking I can't gather intelligence or information about this person unless they trust me. And if I don't have intel about them and their situation, then I can't tailor the service to their needs. And if I can't tailor the service to their needs, then they're never even going to want to buy. They're going to like really shut me down. But if you think about this, like your customers who are just going to buy because you're really confident in your introduction, they'll let you go through all these things very quickly. And they'll even ask buying questions at first. So those are going to be your 4 easy ones every day. But then the 5 to 6 to 8 sales that you get that are not just buying questions and they buy right after the close, those are going to be based on your ability to take the customer through the checkpoints of the sale and view it that way. Okay, what do we mean by gaining someone's trust? Talk to me a little bit about that. If our whole goal in the introduction is to gain their trust, like what does that actually mean? No, we're going to be reiterating this, but I'm going to focus the whole training on probably at least this one, but the first 2 sections. Yeah. So let's think they need to see us as experts in what we do. So let's think about that in the context of a sale. Like trust is built on 2 things. So competency and character. Character meaning, do you have good intentions for the person? Are you actually a good person? And competency meaning, do you actually possess the skill set to help them per the relationship you have? So our relationship is to them is like service provider to customer, right? So do we have the competency to actually provide them a good service? And do you as a sales rep have the skill set to portray how good that service is? That's what you have to be perceived as, that type of person. And then character, meaning you have to be perceived as the type of person who has their best interest in mind. So there's 2 things that we're getting at is 1, I'm a professional. I'm good at what I do. I know what I'm doing. And 2, I actually want to help you. I want to give you something that's better for your home. Because that's the character is like the desire and the intention, right, that you have, right? Competency is, do I have the ability to do that? Because you can want to give them a good service, but if you don't have the ability to even portray it, then like you don't have the skills. It doesn't matter how good of a person you are. So yeah, that's key, is being perceived as an expert. So perception is really everything of expert. Okay, so talk to me a little bit about how do you get perceived as being an expert then? What would be some things that would go into being perceived as an expert? Confidence? Okay, yeah, great. And is an expert going to be like unconfident in what they're doing? No. So confidence? Yeah, knowledge. Yeah, so this is going to be, that's like part of what we're saying when we say sharp. You're sharp, like you're on the ball. You definitely, you know your stuff. That's why I like peppering in little phrases like, listen, I don't want to bore you with all the details because there's a lot that goes into making a service really good for you, especially when we're talking about the yard. But to summarize it, everything that lives there and that gets into your house starts in the yard. And so we have to systematically get rid of the source of the problem and do it in a way that it doesn't come back over time. So that's what everything we do in the yard is geared towards. And if you talk that way, then people will stop asking you, like, you guys ever get the question, what chemicals do you guys use? What products are in your service? Why would anyone ever ask that if they didn't trust that you're the expert? So when you get those types of questions, just know that it's because they don't see you as the expert. They're wanting you to prove it. Whereas like knocking, so like this always baffled me, and I never understood why until recently. I never get those questions on the doors. At least not anymore. Not when I made a shift towards getting really good at this stuff. I don't ever get the questions like, hey, do you treat for this specialized type of bug and why? And what are the products? And is it going to hurt my dog? Those questions never come up if you're perceived as the expert. Because an expert you'd never have to worry about that with them, right? If someone was actually a professional expert at pest control, would they be treating your yard with anything that's going to hurt their pets? No. So you'd never actually doubt that. You might ask to just maybe confirm, but it's never like a doubting thing. So if any of your reps are selling and they start to get those questions, just as a leader, the thing you need to work with them on is being perceived as an expert, not in how do you give them a tool that answers all of the customer's questions. Okay, what else goes into being perceived as an expert? Yeah, so there's like situational things that you have to be aware of too, right? Yeah, so and again, I like how you said going off of the knowledge thing. So like situational awareness, maybe. Yeah, if I'm an expert, of course I'm going to know like how having more trees in your neighborhood affects the bug activity. And so, have you guys ever heard people do that in their pitch? Chase Katowski teaches this a lot, where you want to use the surroundings. But it's interesting that he only teaches that to people once they have a level of proficiency in their introduction. So I would say that, like, why would you ever use the surroundings in the neighborhood as part of your intro? Because you're already building the logical case of why I'm an expert. Yeah, so based on the trees, everybody's seeing quite a bit of bug activity here. Notice how I'm using the tonality of implied obviousness. So if I want to use that, instead of being like, really, everyone has bugs in this neighborhood. If I say that, then I'm trying to prove something to someone, right? But if I talk about it like this, now everybody's got the ants, obviously, because the trees you've lived here long enough to know that trees affect the bugs in general, but specifically the ants and spiders get really bad because of the trees. So I don't have to prove anything to anyone. If I'm the expert, I'm just going to state it like it's obvious. And then that makes my intro sound way different. My little brother, I was training with him the other day, and he was saying something how he watched someone's intro who's really good. They were like a 400 or 500 account rep. And he's like, keep up toning a lot, like up pitching. And I was like, listen, so a good intro isn't just certainty all the time. Someone who's really good in their intro is actually going to have these things that just nonchalant prove that the customer should know them. And hey, my name's Hayden. You should know who I am because I'm just assuming I'm on the Facebook page because the service is so good, obviously. And the ants have been really bad in the neighborhood. It's because of the trees. I'm sure you're aware. That's very different than saying, listen, and everyone is getting ants, which is how a lot of people teach to do the intros. Like, hey, my name's Hayden with Moxie Services. Everybody is getting ants right now. It's like where you're trying to just declare to them that the ants are a problem. Whereas in reality, if you were an expert, you wouldn't do that. You just say, yeah, ants are bad. We know this. It's July. Okay. Anyway, that we're getting more into application there, but you can start to see how like the application of certain tonalities actually plays into building trust. So that's why we want to take this checkpoints first approach. What do I need the customer to actually experience in order for me to move on and gather intel? Well, I need them to trust me, and this is how I'm going to do that in certain ways. Any other thoughts on expertise and what goes into building the perception of being an expert? Yeah, so yes, that's going to be throughout the entire sell. We're going to be we need to transfer enthusiasm, but also if you're an expert, no one really becomes an expert without being passionate at what they do. And so like showing passion and enthusiasm is going to portray expertise, because it's very rare to find someone who is truly expert and doesn't just love what they do. Okay, cool. So now let's talk about this question is really important to understand. What does a customer need to feel or think about you in order to know that you are an expert? Cool. Do you know? So it is a lot of what we've already covered, but yeah, just talk to me a little bit about that, because it's one step further than what we've covered so far. Because now I know what needs to happen. Like they need to perceive me as an expert, but like how does that? What do they need to even feel or see from me to know that I'm an expert?
I guess people typically have a really good way of judging whether or not you're knowledgeable in what you're talking about.
Okay.
That assumption, but you need to be able to just be like well spoken.
Yeah. Yes. So like if I really want to be perceived as an expert, then my script is probably going to be slightly more formal than not. And I also think about this in terms of what are you wearing? So that has to match up with your messaging. If your messaging is I'm an expert and I care, I know how to solve your problems. Because again, going back into what builds trust, yes, there has to be expertise and the perception of expertise, but there also has to be the perception of genuineness, but genuine care from you. So if you think about the tactics of the intro in the greeting, what do I always teach to do in the greeting? The very first thing, like what tonality are you using? I really want to know, or I care. So why would I choose that at the very beginning? Because our pitch essentially is that we actually care about you and your family, and we are going to provide the best service. So if I didn't want to be perceived as someone who really cares, if I just wanted to be perceived as someone who's an expert and take it or leave it, I really wouldn't care about doing that. I really want to know or making you feel that I care. Does that make sense? So my messaging is partly that I actually care. So the things I'm going to do in the intro, I want to help them feel that I actually care. Hey, how are you today? Instead, so yeah, I'm taking genuine interest in their life. And why is that consistent with our brand? Is because that's how they're going to feel when they talk to people on the phone. That's how they're supposed to feel when they have a problem and they think we might have done something wrong, and then they call and we actually resolve that for them and show them that this is normal and we're going to really help you. Those overall, those are the feelings and the perception of I actually care. So that's all really important in getting to that outcome. So again, it's expertise or ability to solve their problems, and then it's the care that I actually do want what's in your best interest. You can just throw these things on the ground that are not. Oh, you're just taking the monitor? Okay, sweet. Okay, and I know this is like beating a dead horse with some of this stuff, but it's really important to understand as you're going through, because now right after this, we're going to get into some examples of what this actually looks like. Okay, what else do I need the customer to feel in my intro? Yeah. Yes, so this message is going to be communicated through your body language and through your tone of voice and through your words. Fundamentally, those are the three mediums through which we communicate the message of I'm an expert and I actually care about giving you the best service. I actually care about what happens here, like with your home. So yeah, your body language, now we're going to actually adjust the body language so that there's this feeling of, oh, this guy's really confident. I can look at him and see he's done this a lot. Or she's definitely, this is not her first rodeo. This is not her first customer that she's dealt with or given a really good service to. So part of what I would say here is, what do I need the customer to feel? I need them to feel that this is not the first time that I've done this. I need them to feel that I'm not scared. So I'm comfortable. Because what goes into confidence is like I'm comfortable. So now you can see like why doing a lot of things makes sense to do. So if I want to feel the customer to feel like I'm comfortable, then I'm going to do things like lean in on one foot or maybe even lean against the house as much as I possibly can. So if there is the chance for me to lean against the wall, I'm going to choose to lean against the wall rather than not, because I know that's going to bolster the appearance of I'm really comfortable here. And why would I want the customer to feel that I'm comfortable? Because I need them to trust me. And part of trusting me is going to be from that I'm an expert. And part of being an expert means that I've done this a million times, whether you have or you haven't, right? Another one too, in this first checkpoint of building trust, is you probably want the customer to feel like you have something really good that's almost like a secret, that it's so good that they just need to make sure they pay attention for the rest of your pitch to find out what it is. You really just want to build this anticipation or this like cool factor. You guys know what the rule of cool is? So rule of cool is basically that no one will ever think something is cooler than you think that it is. So I want to build that into this. If I'm an expert and I really love what I do, like I'm going to make it feel like, man, this stuff is awesome. And so that's why I would use the mystery and intrigue tonalities, because I'm trying to build the anticipation of rule of cool. And all I'm really getting at with this stuff, guys, in going deep here is like, you should never do anything unless it's on purpose in your introduction. So if you're teaching recruits, let's say you're a team leader and you're teaching reps to say everybody gets ants in the neighborhood, and that's how you've been teaching them, I would just ask why. Why are you doing that? And maybe not even scrutinizing that you should or shouldn't be, but just if you don't know why you're doing something, you either shouldn't be doing it or you need to quickly find out why and like what the main purpose of that thing is. And that's how I view every step of the sales. If I don't know why I'm doing that thing, I really need to check my own assumptions and my own expertise, or I need to question whether I should even be doing it. See what I'm saying here? Okay. Can you give me other examples of things that you do that like we just do because, and we don't really understand why? I would say that's one of them that I see the most, is like for some reason, everybody does this thing where they're like, yeah, everyone is getting ants. You want to say it like it's really big. Yeah, it's a huge problem in the neighborhood.
Anyone that can't, if they don't understand, but the same thing could be said for name dropping. People don't understand the value of why we're
Dude,
name dropping.
great point. Yeah, so if in my introduction I'm used to saying, yeah, I work with the Johnsons and the Smiths, obviously be honest with people that are close. Like, why say that? Now, I understand bandwagoning is important, but why is bandwagoning important? So talk to me a little bit about that. Why would I want a bandwagon in the introduction?
I personally think it makes me sound situations.
Yes,
Especially if
bolsters your case that you're an expert.
This person was having these issues, and like you can name specifics. That's my favorite thing to do.
So think about, how does that bolster your case that you're an expert if you name drop people with very specific situations of how our services helped them in the neighborhood?
But you're just explaining that, like, you're basically giving them a case study as to that you were already an expert.
Yeah, I was already an expert, and the thing that I gave them really worked, and so there's evidence that it worked. Now, how also would it show that you have genuine care? If you know a customer situation, then the only way you would know that is if you cared about the outcomes. So already the customer has this massive, like, entire book, this novel of information in their mind about you, and you've only said like a few words. Yeah, Chris. Yes. So yeah, again, bolstering these points here gives you credibility and helps them feel comfortable in making the decision already. What were you going to say, Cole?
I think, like, from an intro perspective, people want to know who are you, why are you here,
Yes.
and that gives validity to why you're here,
Okay.
and to who you are.
Yeah. So that's a structure of the intro. Those are things that we do, right, in the intro. Who you are, why you're here, what you're doing. And then what you plug into those sections, you want to make sure that it just bolsters your case that you're an expert, that you can be trusted, and that you actually care. And if it doesn't do those things, it should not be in your intro. And if it doesn't do those things in the way you speak and in your body language, then you shouldn't do them that way.
I think one that I see a lot of reps do as well is even just they actually don't understand the value and the importance of the greeting, and you can tell because of how they respond to what the person said.
Oh, interesting.
Like,
Yeah, so
part of their script. I'm like,
okay, so
actually
dude, all right. So actually, this is funny because the next thing that I wanted to do, actually, I wrote notes behind here as I was preparing. The next thing I want to do is, okay, we've gone into some of the philosophy of the intro, and you can go a lot deeper, truthfully, but I don't want to, just for the sake of it feeling a little bit boring. Let's get into some actual application of what this looks like. The biggest reason why I wanted to go into this, though, is because, like, you guys need to have flexibility in what you're saying on the doors based on what happens. So let's look at a few different scenarios of what this might look like in different types of customers. And I also want to look at what it looks like on the opposite side of the spectrum. What does it look like to break rapport? So Harrison, you just said one. Breaking rapport would look like if a rep thinks that doing the "I really want to know" tonality in the greeting, "Hey, how you doing today?" is like the end all be all of having a good intro. And then the customer's like, "I'm doing good. How are you?" And then they just go on. They don't even respond. They're just like, "Yeah, so I'm Hayden." Why is that bad? It's because it wasn't just the greeting. Like, that's part of the strategy to accomplish what we're trying to do with trust. And you break that trust by not interacting with them like a normal human. Yeah. So if they say, "I'm good, how are you?" Great, fantastic. Just trying to stay cool and dry out here. Envious of the air conditioning. Just to not waste your time. My name is Hayden. Now, why would I ever say just to not waste your time? It's because they were interacting with me and I could have had a whole conversation with them. But would an expert just sit here and have a whole conversation without getting to the point? No, an expert would probably get to the point. So I'm going to be a kind expert, though. Yeah, my day's been great. Thanks for asking. So my name's Hayden. Nice to meet you. And then I might wait for them to respond. Kathy. Good to meet you, Kathy. The reason I'm stopping by right now. So, sorry, it's Moxie at the Blue Trucks. Everybody's been getting ants and spiders. It's with the trees. So instead of saying everyone is getting ants and spiders, I'm going to say that with obviousness. Everyone's getting spiders and ants with the trees. Can you hear the obviousness in my tonalities there? Now, because the problems have been so bad, we've got few spots left, and I haven't told many people, but if you're interested, I can get it for half. So that's that whole, everything that I did in that intro is geared towards building trust. What's another example of how reps break trust in the introduction? Not actually conversing or responding is a great one. Well, go ahead.
eye contact is
Yes. Okay. So eye contact. Yeah, because now we're getting into some of the tactics here. So let's think of like body language tactics first. Because all of this, you guys really need to understand the difference from approaching the sale in terms of strategy. What we just talked about was the strategy of approaching a sale. Those are the underlying reasons why you do things and choosing what things to do. So now we're going to get into the tactics. So this is a very tactical approach to the sale. Eye contact, that's huge. How much eye contact is the question? Anyone know? It's about 85% eye contact is what you want. Anything over, this is statistical, like this is a proven study. Anything over 85%, and it gets very awkward. Anything less than 85%, and you start to feel, so it's this continuum where the lower you go below 85%, the more sketchy you feel, and the less confident that you look. And the very low end of that spectrum would be like if I'm looking around constantly, then like some people are going to be wondering when I'm going to rob them. And the best case, they're going to be wondering like, what are you doing on my porch saying you sell pest control when you clearly have no clue what you're doing? Or you're scared to even look me in the eye and talk to me as a human. So 85% is about what we want. Okay. All right. So what do you do in order to break eye contact 15% of the time?
I was going to say that 15% should be controlled as well.
Yeah, yes. Yes. Purposeful.
85% of your eye contact is just
Yeah. So like a bat. So the worst version of breaking eye contact would be like, hey, my name is Hayden. I'm with Moxie. It's the blue truck. So the reason I'm stopping by is because I work with Smiths, Johnsons. It's mainly been ants out here. So there's no reason for me to look down at my shoes. If I only have so much time to get this message across that I'm an expert in my field, I'm confident, competent service professional, I know what I'm doing, and I care, and I'm here to help, and what I have for you is going to be better than what you currently have. I don't have very much time to get that message out. So every little thing counts, right? So that's why like I would recommend when you start your day, shorten your intro up and only break eye contact once. In fact, you could calculate what this is the nerd part of me that does this is I'll go look at how long my intro I want it to be. And I'll say like, all right, what is 85% of this? Okay, so I'm going to have eye contact on these parts. And then the 15% where I don't is only going to be for like 0.7 seconds because that comes out to of 7 seconds or whatever. That might come out to 10%. So 0.9 seconds, that's 85%. I'm only going to be looking away for 0.9 seconds, which means that I can only look away once. If I look away twice, then I'm going to start breaking rapport. So what's the most meaningful thing I could look away to? You could look away to a bug problem, right? If, for example, that the rest of the customers have one. So yeah, when would you look away to point out like a bug problem? If they actually have something, that's a great thing. So you want to be situationally aware and look around. When else what if they don't have anything? Why would you point out? What would be a good reason to still point to the eaves or to where common problem areas are, even if you can't see a problem? Yeah. Yes, but you don't want to do something just for the purpose of making yourself feel relaxed because there's already tons of chances to do that. So my point is you want to actually have a very purposeful thing to do that also simultaneously accomplishes you being open and inviting in your body language. Because that's like the ground level is like everything we do has to be open and inviting. So anytime I'm going to point, I have to point in a way that makes me feel open rather than closed off. Because again, like the psychological message needs to be, you can trust me and I'm very comfortable. And how do I show that you can trust me? I'm very comfortable when I point to the eaves or to the neighbors is if I point like this rather than this or across my body like that. But again, I'm trying to get your guys' mind thinking about like when you would do things in certain situations. And that's what you should be practicing is, okay, so let's say you can't see any bugs in the eaves. What would be still a really good reason to point to a potential bug issue? Yeah. Yeah. And if you've had other customers that had the same thing and you couldn't see it, for example, like if I've sold 8 in an area for like, and I'm on the 9th, I know for sure there's a high probability I'm going to sell this next door. Then I'm going to do a similar thing that I did with the other customers and say, so listen, the reason why I'm stopping by, I'm Hayden with Moxie Blue Truck. So I'm stopping by because Janice, the Smiths, Johnsons, they've all been struggling with spiders getting in through the eaves. And even though there's not much activity up there, that's still a huge issue. That's why you get them in the basement. Anyway, my truck's already out. So if I can fit you guys in while we're here, it's significantly cheaper. But that would be a great reason to point, even if there's nothing. Do you guys see where I'm getting at here? Is like how this looks to be versatile on the doors, knowing that I don't care about doing the same thing every single time so much as building trust every time. And that's going to look different for each customer. Again, this is not the 4-day training. This is the 4-day training. What are you going to train a rookie to? Bro, I don't care what you're pointing at, but it's always going to be that way every time. And your body language is always going to look like this. But what if I don't have neighbors? You're going to point off and say, look, my trucks are going to be here tomorrow. I don't have anybody yet, but there's going to be a lot of customers getting service for ants. So I don't even care because you're going to do that. It's more important to do the same thing every single time for someone trying to get 4 sales a day or to that level. But then once you've got this ability to say, no, all I care about is trust. So what am I going to do to build that? Okay. What else would be important in my body language in relation to the things we've talked about with trust in the intro? I mentioned a couple. Leaning on the house is a good one. Stance in general. Yeah. Yeah. Like you want to just make this look really comfortable. Comfortable and confident. Yeah. Slow and controlled. So that like the rule with body, there's only 2 rules of body language, really. It is always be confident and then never forget rule number 1. Always be confident. No, the 2 rules for body language are no unplanned movements and always slow and controlled when you do have planned movements. So if you find yourself moving or fidgeting in any way that you did not plan, that is bad. Because again, it has to have purpose, right? So like, how does this look typically on the doors? Is like reps will like shuffle around like this with no thought as to what they're doing. So if that's the case, then you first need to learn how to be still always. But then you can really get into this cool dance of moving in a way that is captivating to the customer. And that if you have long, so Harrison, you have really long limbs. It's like you should be at every chance you get using that to be like your gesticulations opening up and using those like broad sweeping motions to keep people's attention always. Whereas if you're slightly on the shorter side, and then what you might want to do, but think so, in joking aside, if someone is short in stature, what is going to be their typical response to someone who's very confident and burly? So you probably might be a little scared just based on stature, right? So how would you show that you are confident in a person worth listening to? Is like most of your pitch is not going to really be moving or like having huge gesticulation. It's just going to be easily like you need to stand still, because the perception of someone who is not confident by height naturally, or someone that does not have a big presence, you can make yourself have a big presence by moving super slow and by being still. But again, so like I'm trying to give you guys just a peek into my mind of how I view this stuff, because I know that's valuable for this group specifically. Because again, I think part of the problem in the past of you guys underperforming, those of you that have, has been you just check the boxes without any thought of as to why or what you're doing. So I'm trying to get you to think about really like having a purpose for everything and in relation to what you already have at your advantage. Okay, anything else in terms of body language that we should be focusing on? Okay, so why would I smile and want to be positive? I know it's so obvious, but I just like smile versus not.
Sorry, I'll say something. You got it. It wasn't.
Yeah. So you probably want to smile just at the right times, though, right? Because okay, so when would be a bad time to smile? In the introduction, for most people.
When you're talking about a bug problem.
Yeah, dude, the ants have been so bad. It's just incredible how bad the ants are right now. Yeah, and everyone hates them. Yeah, it's crazy how much they hate them. Yeah, yeah. And the cool part is like nobody can get rid of these ants. Yeah. Luke, go ahead.
I just think it's really important though to also like pace lead, because if someone's having a bad day and you smile,
another terrible thing to do. Yes, the worst thing you could possibly do is be smiling when someone is not smiling in the very first part of your introduction. It is the biggest rapport breaker from a body language standpoint, because they're not looking at your feet shuffling, or there's not even enough time to show whether you're confident or not. It's if they come out and they're like, "What do you want?" and you're like, "Hey, how are you today?" But you'll notice if you do that, they'll get more and more pissed off the more you smile. Because a lot of reps will think, well, if I'm just happy, then I'll get the sales. Yes, be happy. Don't not be happy. But you also need to learn how to match customers too. But that's, again, like if you want to sell 4 a day, just be happy on every single door. Most will be pissed at you. 4 people will buy from you, though, which is great. Yeah, that's fair. So when would you smile then in that interaction? Yes, dude. After you've matched their body language, right? So if someone, like for example, let's say I want to be perceived as comfortable. So let's say there's like a little ledge right here and I can lean on the house comfortably. And a big guy comes out of the door and he's standing up to me like this. Yeah, what do you want? What should I do with my body language right there? Because if I'm just like chilling, leaning against his house, like purring against like a freaking cat, he's going to get even more pissed. He's probably upset that I'm touching his house in the first place. So what should I do to match his body language? Yeah, so if somebody comes out like that, the first thing you should do is like, hey, man, how's it going? I'm going to stand up straight right away. And then once he's, yeah, what do you need? Yeah, I'll be brief. How's your day going, by the way? It's fine. What's going on? Yeah, my name's Hayden. I'm with Moxie. So the reason now I've paced, right? So now I can get back to being comfortable again because I'm trying to make him comfortable. But that's all because of, again, if I want to build trust with someone, the easiest way to break trust is to be the exact opposite of how they act right away in the intro. Okay. Man, this is probably, if I'm trying to think of if anybody a true rookie in here that hasn't sold before yet? Okay. How complicated or confusing does this feel so far? Okay. Because I'm thinking if I were a rookie, I'd just be like, how does this apply to anything
So
yet?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was not thinking the same thing, but let's say I am training a rookie. At what point do you start to bring this in? Like during the summer, when am I going to start going this in?
So Think about this. How important is it to know the philosophy of a sale if someone does not have the ability to stand still on a doorstep? Yeah, it doesn't even matter. It might matter a little bit. Like you might say, hey, listen, you're breaking trust because you keep moving.
But beyond that,
But like going into these deep things, like that's only important if you're trying to get to the higher level of sales. And this is really only important if we stop here, then it's useless. Just philosophizing for philosophizing's sake, which is always so stupid, I think. So like where we're going from here is that now you can build the perfect introduction out of this. And you can be really flexible with people once you understand that deeper stuff. But for a rookie, you just want them to understand this word, trust. Okay, listen, Jackson, you're on the door. You see how you keep moving? You're breaking trust because of that. So we need to focus on your ability to just stand still at every door. So that's what you're going to do for the next 5 doors. Okay, now you still move. Did you feel that? Okay, nope, dude, I said only 1 point. It's all right. So that's what you would focus on. Get them the ability to do this. But you guys that have sold over 200-300 accounts before, like you already have the ability to do this. So now it's being able to be flexible within the framework is the most important part, because a deeper understanding of what you're doing at each level lets you start practicing it in every situation, and you don't feel bad for boxing yourself into certain tactics. There's more that you can do in this stuff here, and that's actually that takes a lot of thought to get in the habit of thinking that way on the doors. Because what you're typically doing, and I know this about you specifically, and most people, truthfully, is that it's just easy to get into the habit of doing the exact same thing every time.
Well, you have to be so present to be aware of what you are thinking in those terms of not being boxed in. The level of presence has to be at a much higher level than others would.
Totally.
That is required just to do the same.
100%. Yep. Okay, guys. Other body language things you can think of that would help us bolster our case of that we're experts and that we actually care.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So we have iPads on the door. Like,
iPads.
with that not seeing closed off or like hiding behind the iPad.
So what? Tell me what you mean by what would an iPad? How could you using an iPad break trust based on what we've talked about? What would that look like?
Like if you're just standing up, how they brand you, and you're just telling hi, my name is Erilyn.
Yeah, for sure. So and again, this is all things, tools that we want to use to our advantage. So if you're holding the iPad in front of you like this, then that's like you are hiding behind it to an extent. Or if you are doing that, you then need to make sure you have really good body language with the other arm that's not tied up with the iPad. But this is exactly why, if you guys have gone through the training, this is exactly why I drop the iPad once they answer the door. Because I'm trying to show that I'm more relaxed, and I don't feel relaxed when I'm like this. I feel way more relaxed if I can drop it, and I'll even hold it with just like 1 or 2 fingers like this. Yeah, it really forces me to relax. I'm like letting it weigh my arm down almost to where I'm not like tight. If that makes sense. Okay, yeah, Chris.
iPad, what I like to do instead of pointing out different things, I just like showing people the iPad. It's a great way to break eye contact.
Yeah, so that would be a purposeful way to break eye contact in the intro. And then also, as we get into the deeper parts of the sale, meaning like further on in the presentation, using the iPad is a great idea if you're trying to show something that helps your logical case, right? Certainly when you're giving price, but you really just need to think about, does this help build my logical case or does it hurt it? If the person's just looking at all the numbers on is that going to help them listen to what my logical case is, or does it hurt my logical case? So that would give you cues as to like when to drop the iPad, when to keep it up. Because this is what I'll get questions from sales reps all the time. They're like, so when do you drop the iPad? Dude, this really isn't that complicated. Do you want them listening to you or not? And does having them stare at 1,000 numbers on this iPad make them listen to you, or does it not? I just want to know like when to drop it. Yeah, but for rookie, but if you're like a rookie and you really want to learn like probably the thing you could do on every door first, which is show the number, drop the iPad, talk to them, show the number again, drop the iPad, like that sort of thing. But again, it's situational. So if the person is like staring at it and not paying attention to me, then yes, I'm going to drop it and catch their eyes. But that doesn't mean I should do that every time. It's just only if it's going to help my logical case. And I assume they need to be paying attention to me if I'm going to ask for the close, right? Okay, we're going to move on from body language and just talk about like tonalities now, because this is how we can really build like a really good introduction through thinking about these things. All right, we're trying to build trust, and we're trying to be competent, confident service professionals that actually care. So walk me through what some things that we could do that would break trust in the introduction with our tonalities, or with the way we're speaking, paraverbals. Yeah. Talking too fast, right? So what message does it give to a customer if I'm talking way too fast? Nervous also could give that I don't care because I'm just trying to get through my pitch, and I've just done this a million times. The faster I can do it, the faster I can get on to the next doors. It's just a numbers game, and I only care about you as a number anyway. So as long as I can get my 3 today, then I'm good. I don't care if you're the one. That's how most salesmen actually feel, though, right? So that is what they're trying to do, especially the guys that are girls that are really hardworking. Is like they're just trying to get to the next door as quickly as possible. And something drastic would change. So this is something you guys actually could really learn from in the Denver crew. Is like something would drastically change in your sales performance if you were like just hyper focused on every person that you're talking to and not worried about your numbers game. Work hard getting from door to door, but don't think of having to get through things quickly to get on to the next door. It's like you want to be present with every person in a way that you're like actually trying to discern their needs. What else would break rapport in my tonalities? Luke said pacing, matching, right? If I'm not matching people. So if someone quiet comes on, they're like, yeah, can I help you? And you're like, hey, I'm Luke. How you doing today? Wrong, bad. The kids are sleeping. What do you need? I'm sorry. Can I come back another time? They're like, no, please don't. Please don't come back. And then you come back and you're like all offended because now they have a new no soliciting sign on the door that wasn't there before. And that's your cool story of the day because you didn't sell any. Yeah, Chris? Yeah, I don't care. How's it going? Yeah, monotone is going to be really bad. Yeah. So let me ask you this. Is there any time that being monotone is actually good? Maybe at the first, yeah. Hey, how you doing today? Hey, how's it going? Maybe, potentially. What about if someone asks you, like, because what does monotone portray? What message? I just don't care. Yeah, I'm just here. But what if someone says something really bad about their service? You don't want to engage in the conversation. It might be a decent idea to be monotone there, right? Yeah, if they're like, yeah, I've had this service forever and they're just terrible. I just can't believe the guy lied to me. So instead of bandwagoning on that, just be like, oh, I'm so sorry. That sounds terrible. Do you know much about them? Not really. They're not. I try not to like engage in that stuff. But let me just ask you, and then you switch back, right? So if you're trying to avoid a conversation about something or show that you actually don't care, it doesn't bother you, then maybe being monotone is not a terrible idea. Again, I'm trying to give you certain examples of how the versatility really plays this here.
I think like
Colt.
more personalities, like when you ask questions.
Yeah, when you're asking questions genuinely in the wrong tonality means something completely different. Yeah. So, hey, so you guys have seen your guy treat before, right? So if I'm talking and even so think if I ask hey, so have you guys seen your company treat before? That feels different than have you guys seen your company treat before? Those are two very different messages. The first one is I don't know what they do, and I don't actually know if he's ever seen it. I genuinely need to know in order to help you. And the second one is I know you just said you love Terminix and you watch them treat your house every day and you call them out every day as you're best friends with the guy and you guys have had Christmas dinner before. So why would I ask, now, have you guys seen your guy treat before? Why would I would never want to ask that with the I really want to know tonality. Why? Because I already know. You just told me. So I look stupid if I ask that. Right? Yeah. So, or if someone's expressing, yeah, like we just have a hard time with pest control because we had a dog die one time and we don't know if it was because of the products or not. And then be like, oh no, that's so sad. Who are you guys using? That's not like that. Or like, how do you feel about that? It's like, I really want to know. They're like, no, you know how they feel about that because of the way they were saying it. So those are examples. Again, going back to if I already know what the treatment it does and like I know the customer was telling me it, then I would want to ask it with the obviousness. The tonality changes the message, right? So you've seen him treat before. It's different than, so you've seen him treat before, right? Have you watched him treat? Have you watched him treat? That's a very different message. Have you watched him treat? They spray the inside, spray the outside, and it's pretty basic. Yeah, we all know it's basic. Now, what do you have him do extra on top of that? So why would I ask that with I really want to know? Because maybe I don't know what they do extra. I care because I want to know. Now, why would I care? Because I'm trying to build rapport and gain intel. So yeah, it's a great example. How you ask questions is incredibly important, but it has to be contextual. So this is where a lot of thought comes into practicing this. Is I know this sounds complicated, but you really should run yourself through scenarios of what if this, what if that? How do my tonalities change based on these scenarios? Because that's going to get you in the habit of just doing it on the fly. So this is where people who are really charismatic, naturally good salesmen, they do this without even thinking about it. And when you're feeling really good and confident on the doors, you'll do this without even thinking about it. But you're what's called unconsciously competent, meaning you're good, but you don't know why you're good. The level we want to get to is we want to understand why we're good so that we can replicate it. That's the whole. Okay. Other examples of tonality, how tonality breaks rapport.
You mentioned it earlier, but just the improper use of
Yeah, improper use of phrasing a declarative as a question. If I do it every time, then it seems like I don't know what I'm talking about, especially when I should be declaring something. And if I'm declaring something about my expertise that you don't know, this is the best way to treat, hands down. Nobody does it this way because they don't put in enough effort to learn and understand the training techniques to get line level technicians to do this properly. As a customer, you don't know that, right? But I do because I'm an expert. So I'm going to phrase it, I'm going to say it declarative, like certainty. But if it's something you and I both know, we're going to say it with it's hard to get people to do good work these days. So what tonality is that? Implied obviousness. And I might want to say that if they say, yeah, my technician comes out and he just says, listen, no, that's a decent job for what they're doing for sure. And definitely for not training their technicians every day. But let's just be honest, it's really hard to get people to do good work these days and to go above and beyond. That is exactly why people choose us. So then I can shift from that. I love the obviousness to certainty. It's one of my favorite combos. It just hits like really hard. It hits good. It's nice. And the customer they love it. They don't know why they love it, but they definitely do. Okay. What other questions do you guys have in relation to the introduction, especially as it relates to gaining trust and things we need to be focusing on there? Yeah, Luke.
Do you feel like there's a sweet spot as far as how many intel questions to ask, or are you kind of registering that?
Getting into intelligence gathering. This is where things really differ based on the person. Cole, if you listen to the podcast that Cole and I did, you talked about how one of your processes with selling as well as you did this year was making your intro the same every time. And here I am talking about making it different every time. But really what I'm actually talking about is like being intelligent about the way you make your intro so that it can be the same and have the highest likelihood of gaining trust. Does that make sense? Because then the rest of that trust is going to be built off of cutting through how you cut through the smoke screens. But yeah, intel gathering, that one is what you should probably practice the most on varying situations. So let's think about this a little bit. If I wanted to come up with a few questions that would most likely work on every door, like what would those questions be? They would just have the highest likelihood. And I wanted the same ones every single time. Yeah. Okay, great. So yeah, and again, the philosophy of intel gathering, we'll get into this a little bit more, is you want to start with broad questions. So think of each line that I write here as a question and how broad that question is. So you want to start with broad questions and you want to funnel down into questions that are more personal. Because in order for me to help them make a good buying decision, I need to understand the things that matter most to them. So if I start out and they say, hey, yeah, I'm with XYZ company and I love them. I'm not going to ask them like, yeah, what are the things that you hate about XYZ? I can't ask that first, but maybe I want to get there. And I'd be like, okay, cool. Why do you like them so much? What caused you to go with them in the first place? Yeah. And I imagine they're probably solving that issue pretty well for you right now, or else you wouldn't love them so much. Okay, cool. And just so that I can understand your situation, because most customers that were with XYZ, they end up really liking our service in spite of the fact that they had a good experience. Do you guys have pets or kids by chance? And do they spend time, like you guys barbecue or grill outside in the yard? I saw you guys had okay, cool. Okay, so in terms of the bugs then, what's the thing that just bothers you the most about, like when you're outside, do you guys have issues with what most people experience, the mosquitoes and having to worry about fire ants, or do they have that under control for you pretty well? So that question's not going to get anywhere if I ask that first, but if I funnel it down, then I'm going to really have some good intel. Because again, what am I doing in this phase? Building rapport and determining their needs. So if that's the lens through which we're going to view intel gathering, let's just talk about different types of customers and how that might look.
I think like asking rapport really quick, or asking knowledge based off of how well you build rapport in your introduction to.
Yes. So that is actually my whole point with it being a checkpoint model. Is if you think of it as a checkpoint, you and the customer have to go through that checkpoint together. You can't leave them behind. So if I start asking questions and I don't have an initial foundation of trust, it's not going anywhere. And that's when what happens is, have you guys ever got to the point where someone listened to you the whole time? They might have even asked the buying question, and then you gave them price, you closed, and then they just like hardcore shut you down. It's because that happens when you leave them behind in the intro. It's like you needed to build trust, and they weren't quite there yet, and you just kept moving down the line. Like you just forced your way down to the close. So yeah, you're exactly right, Cole. You can't even get to asking questions if you don't reach the checkpoint with the customer of a foundation of trust first. That's why I included the greeting and smoke screens in this section of building trust. It's not necessarily the intro, but they accomplish building trust. So think about, how does overcoming a smoke screen build more trust? Meaning, give me an example of what someone might shoot off at me in terms of an objection in the intro. Like they cut me off and say what? Okay, that's fine. Who do you guys use, by the way? Okay, so I'm already into intel gathering, but what am I really doing? I'm just testing if I have enough trust with you based on how I overcame that objection. And I'll be like, okay, so how long have you guys been with them? But let's say I don't have enough trust. How would you respond if I asked that? How long have you guys been with them? Oh, you might say that. So if I really don't have trust, yeah, for sure. That's mostly going to be if I probably like offended you or something, or was, yeah, they'll say something like, doesn't matter. Or the classic one is we've been with them for 5 years and they're my absolute favorite. But do you see why, like, how dangerous it is to not view this in terms of checkpoints? Because what do sales reps usually draw the conclusion about that statement after they get it so many times? They're like, yeah, everyone in this neighborhood has been with XYZ for 10 years and they love them. Was that actually true though? Do they actually love their company? Probably not. They're just like, you don't have permission to ask them questions. And so they're a little bit irritated that you are. And so they're going to say the thing that most likely gets you off the doorstep. That's all they're doing. And so you can't, and this is what's the rule with the number one rule with the customer is they're always lying to you until when? Until they trust you. So they will lie to you until you're trusted. That's just the rule. And there's no use in getting upset about that because that's just what they are. That's what they do.
Not putting down the shovel to keep going because ultimately they know that you're just wasting their time. And they're like, dude, like for the love, just stop.
Yeah. Like, I told you, I'm not interested. And then you try to just confidence your way into the sale by, no, I understand, but do you want the garage done too? I told you, I'm not interested. And they're like, and so then they come home and they're like, Harrison, can we just train on the not interested objection? And so then you're like, what does your intro sound like? Because have you guys trained rookies like this? And maybe many of you have been that rookie where you're like, Hayden, how do I overcome the objection of my wife's aunt's uncle's brother has cancer and they have a funeral this weekend? I'm like, dude, you don't. You just walk away. But what if everyone says that? Just, you should probably go home and do something else. How do I overcome the objection of, yeah, whatever. My dog gets sick. And I love the spiders. It's, you don't on that one. Yeah, you just leave. It's almost like when a rep's iPad dies and they're like, I'm like, hey, what happened today? And they're like, my iPad died. When did it die? Like 7:30. What about all of the hours it was alive? Same thing, literally same exact thing. My point is, like, you start drawing improper conclusions if you view smoke screens as truth. They're not true. So if they keep giving you smoke screens, it's because you don't have their trust yet. So then it's important to back up. You want to try to gather intel, but if they're not letting you, then realize that you don't have their trust yet. So you have to be thinking creatively, like, how do I gain this person's trust?
That was going to be my next question, is because sometimes I feel, I don't know how to describe this. I feel like I'm just like running in place almost. And I feel like I don't, sometimes, sorry, I don't know how to phrase this. I can't think of the right verbiage. I want to know how to build trust. Like, I can tell they're giving it to me, but I'm just going to sit there and pitter patter until I feel like they trust me. But you have to like follow the natural progression of the conversation.
So that's why this actually takes practice to be really good at being versatile in this way. So let's just think about a couple of scenarios and we can just run it through. Give me an example of where that happens. Because basically you're saying the predicament is if you try to go on to intel gathering and they just are not giving you the time of day, you still don't have trust. Like, how do you walk back and gain trust again? Because certainly you're not going to go back and do your intro again. Okay, but that's what most people try to do. They're like, but it's really cheap though. They're like, I'm not interested. I understand, but listen, it's half off.
All accident. Like when I first remember realizing this or like feeling like this predicament, I remember trying to just ask with like even more. I really want to know.
Yeah.
They need to know I'm really sincere, but
Sure.
That's obviously not going to necessarily do it. And so sometimes, yeah, sorry, I have things that I'm thinking in my mind that I felt like I go to, but doesn't necessarily work as well as I would.
And it probably, yeah. And if it doesn't feel like it's working, then it's not working at all. So so Cole, I would categorize as incredibly charismatic naturally. It's like you just run with the stuff, and especially when you're feeling good, it's just easy to finagle the conversation how you need it to go, and you're not thinking to yourself, all right, now I've got trust, now I'm going to go on to intel gathering. It's almost just intuitive. All the top reps that I've shadowed, they do the same thing. So Braden Searle is not going on to anything in the sale unless he understands why, like how they could benefit from the service, you know. And he'll leave. And that's, so you might think he's just giving up so early. I don't understand. That's what I need to do too. Just get on to quicker doors. Like he knew that he had enough in the pitch to be trusted, and they still weren't giving him anything. And so because he couldn't gain the trust, they're not going to buy if they don't understand why they need it. So he's just going to move on. Yeah.
I found that if I can get people to talk to me as a person,
Yeah.
I can get people to buy from me. But if
Hey,
I can't
nice.
build that personal relationship prior to being a salesman on the doorstep, then
You said if I can get people to talk to me as a person, then I can get them to buy from me as a salesman. That's a pithy way of saying that too. And hence charisma, wit. Yeah, classic Cole. Okay, so what does that look like then? Because also one of the key things here is like an expert's not just going to go off on a tangent for forever to gain trust and be like, hey, so now do you want to buy? So now that I've talked to you about your cars, do you want to buy? That just doesn't work. So How do you do that? Let's say there's a situation where someone's just not giving you the time of day. You ask what company they use, like, we're with XYZ, we really like them. They're great. You don't have trust. So what are you doing there?
I kind of revolt back to icebreaker, something that I can find common ground with.
Icebreaker. Okay.
Something that I know is going to be positive. And not
Okay.
negative. And even if like they already have a company coming out, then if that's going to be their objection, if they're going to try to close me off with that, then I'll use that to my benefit.
Cool.
Yeah, okay, cool. I've heard great things about them. I know they do a really good job. When they come out, do they do the inside and the outside, or do they just do?
Mm.
And now I can build on that. It's okay. The reason everyone's been giving me a shot still is I don't just treat the house. I do two things different.
Yeah.
And now I can compare and contrast.
Right. And as I've watched you pitch as well, in fact, there's on my YouTube channel, there's me dissecting two of your sales actually. But that's one thing that you'll do is, yes, it appears that you're on to the next part of the sale and you're in the presentation, but what you're really doing is still building rapport, because you're giving them another reason why they should listen to you as the expert, right? A go-to line for me to get, if I'm trying to still gain trust even through the objection cycle, is I'll say, now listen, I don't even know if this is a good fit for you. But what a lot of people have found is that they give us a shot and they have really better than expected results. And the coolest part about it is that we extend coverage like way beyond what most companies do. So have you seen your guy treat when he comes by? So now I'm going to go test whether I can even gather more intel again, right? And so now if they say, yeah, they usually treat blah, blah, blah. Okay, so I know XYZ usually treats this way, but what do they do in addition to that for your home? And like, why did you even sign up with them in the first place? And do you guys have this and this? And I saw you have the deck in the back. I'm sure carpenter bees are a problem too. Do you worry about those, or is that something that you're not out there enough to know about? Okay, cool. Listen, based on what you said, I think you're gonna love this. So most people treat this way. Now what I do is this. Now you're into the presentation. Are you guys following me here with that idea?
I have found that humor makes a huge difference too.
Massive. Yeah.
It shows that you're a normal person.
It does. Completely. If that's part of your personality,
Yeah.
for sure. Because like I would say for me, humor is not a huge part of my personality in my first 10 if I get to know you and I only know you for 10 minutes, I'm probably not cracking a joke. If for anyone that knows me, they'd say that's probably true. But if I know you like lifelong friends, then that's a totally different story. But so that's not necessarily part of my personality. In fact, I come across a little more serious. So like when I'm talking with people. So that just looks a tiny bit different for me. That's probably why my sales tend to be very fast too, though, because get to business pretty quick. But again, I'm going to try to relate to them in a different way than humor. But humor is a great way to do it. Yeah. Let's talk just a tiny bit more about Intel. What time are we at? Okay, we got to finish up here then. All right. The big takeaway that I want you guys to walk away with here, and then I want to get into what were insights for you guys, is you have to view the introduction and intelligence gathering as two checkpoints. That first, the only checkpoint that matters here in the first part of the sale is whether or not you have someone's trust enough to start asking them questions. And so you should structure your introduction based on that. And how I would go about that is structuring an intro that gives you the highest likelihood of building trust in the least amount of words. And then from there, how you overcome smoke screens is very important, but like intel gathering, when you start asking questions, that's going to tell you how much trust you have with the customer. But you guys should be practicing that in different scenarios, like many different situations, what that looks like. And then go through and think of all types of customer scenarios. What does it look like to ask them questions that are relevant to them, that deepen rapport and that show that you actually care and that you're an expert and you can solve their problems? What does that look like for every type of customer? Because then when you're on the doors, you can be really versatile in the questions that you ask. But you're accomplishing the same thing no matter what questions you ask, as long as they are relevant to them and they help you get the information you need to best serve them and they deepen rapport. And so my hope with these trainings is I'm going to go through a lot of the tactic or the strategies first, and then we will get into tactics. But the main thing I'm concerned about is like when you start talking immediately about practices, that really is only good for rookies, getting them to 3 to 4 a day. And I know there's rookies here, but I'm trying to help you guys get to be able to sell 10, 12 a day. And this is like the way to view the sale. It's everything about how you view the sale is what gets you to those really big numbers. Yep. How you see the problem is the problem. What are your guys' takeaways? Let's just go around the room and talk about what things that stood out to you from this training. Yeah, Marilyn.
I really like talking about like tone.
Okay.
Sometimes like I just talk normally or whatever, and I think it'd be cool like practice like just sounding like, yeah, this is obvious. I was ready. Just practicing where I can change my tone.
And so I like that you ended it with that. Use tone to your advantage, because the main takeaway for any type of tonality discussion is, does it make sense to use it right there per the message you're trying to get across to the customer? If you're trying to get across to the customer that this is a problem that everyone knows about, and I know about it, you know about it, you know that I know that, then you probably shouldn't use certainty right there. You probably use obviousness. Anyway, yeah. Adam.
I just like the overall view of understanding why. Like if you don't know why every little
Why? Yeah, don't do it or understand why so that you can then be versatile with it. Exactly.
And that will help you have better info. Everything's tied to.
You have a purpose why you're asking.
Yeah, exactly.
I was just gonna say, being able to view it as a holistic approach, like the broad approach, and making sure you're going through this process rather than in a box. Because what really happens is, and I know I've done this for sure, but like when I'm training rookie reps sometimes, and I'm like, dude, like you're totally shoving a square peg into a circle hole right now. You need to understand how this fits into the overarching purpose that you're just being able to view it that way. I don't know that I've ever broken it down myself mentally that way.
Yeah.
I have a hard time doing that.
I would bet the reason why you get frustrated with reps with that is because it's very frustrating for yourself to not know those things too.
Yeah. No,
So like you
absolutely.
just project on the reps your own frustration with your inability to understand the reasons. But you know that there needs to be reasons. It's just like I don't get them yet. And I also do the same. Yeah, that's going to be huge, especially for you guys that are used to just checking those boxes. Like you need to practice thinking for yourself in different situations so that you can become charismatic, bring the customer through the checkpoints rather than just checking the boxes of, oh, I did this, then I did this, then I did this. I should be good.
But it's interesting too because I would be willing to wager that like you hear a lot of, and myself, like totally myself, I've said this hundreds of times. But I just can't figure out what the difference was between that day and this day.
Yeah.
And the reality is, I actually believe that on the days where it's just like butter
Comes easy.
closing, it's because you're actually doing that.
Yeah, and you're so focused on the customer.
Yes.
And way less focused on,
Yes.
again, this like checking boxes. I think you run the risk of becoming a narcissistic salesman because you're constantly just worried about me, my emotions. I did this, I did that. I should be getting the sales. You start to feel entitled to the results because of the things you're doing. When that just, it doesn't matter. Like why are you even on the doors anyway? It's to serve the customer. So why would you do anything that is not customer focused?
Ironically, I know for myself drives me back to more.
Yeah.
I'm doing the freaking check. Like
And if I just do it, sooner or later, the sales will come. And it's if the sales aren't coming, then just stop checking those boxes and start thinking about what you're doing and why, and how does that apply to the customer. Yep, exactly. John?
I really like what you said about really being hyper focused on each and every. That's kind of what stuck me. Because then if you do that, you'll naturally go fast.
Dude, so hyper focus on the person. And that is so true. It's like everybody in this room is emotionally intelligent enough that if you only cared about what the customer was thinking and feeling and how you could best serve them, your sales days would drastically increase every single day. You'd be able to start predict your outcomes. Everything we do in the script that it just feels really cool will actually start making sense why we do it and how you can apply it. You'll stop complaining about how you feel each day. Stop having these emotional breakdowns. Why? Because it's hard to have an emotional breakdown if you're constantly just thinking about the customer and how to best serve them. And then it becomes this really fun game rather than this dreadful emotional game every day. Luke, takeaways?
There's so much good stuff, but I think the biggest takeaway for me is making sure that because it's really easy to get monotonous about that. I'm taking care of a few neighbors and use that with eye contact.
Sure.
But being more purposeful with that, strategic behind why I'm looking away, rather than just looking away like premeditatedly.
Yeah.
Doing it with
Totally.
every single time.
How can I build trust with this person? It's they haven't answered the door yet. You can gather tons of clues from their house. So if the next door neighbor has a really crappy yard because he hasn't been taking care of it, but the person that you're knocking their door, you can tell that it's just this pristine yard, but maybe like they have license plates that are out of state. It's like, why would you point to the neighbors if they have license plates that are out of state? They don't even know anyone in the neighborhood. They're probably just brand new. And so you might be saying like, listen, I don't know how it is in Missouri, but in Denver, the spiders are really bad in the basements.
A lot of times I'll do the intel questions.
Yeah.
Not the intro. I don't have the trust yet sometimes. So I'm very pronounced.
Yeah. Yeah. Sure. Hey, how was Missouri? They're like, excuse me? The plates. Oh, those are rentals. Oh, you guys are just renting? What is this? Exactly. It's like literally exactly how it goes. Takeaways, guys?
Yeah, one of the big things for me is the eye contact.
Okay.
I've always had such a hard time with that. The importance of eye contact for me is I really got to work on that.
Cool. Huge. Jackson?
I really liked how we talked about hey, how's it going?
Yeah, you're just like, they told me I should be really happy about this gospel thing. So far, I'm having the worst day of my life. Cool. Love it. Yeah, it's huge, especially with body language. It's massive. The principle of pace, pace, lead is if you only could master how to do that, you would honestly be set with all these principles. Chris, takeaways?
Yeah, one of my main focuses it's my focus on the goal.
Yeah.
It's not being necessarily worried about the numbers. Obviously, I want my goal in the back of my mind, like I want to get my numbers, but it's giving my full effort on every more effort than necessary.
Cool. And make sure that effort is directed towards the game of the customer.
Exactly.
If you can focus, because a lot of the guys they're very effort oriented, it's typically the physical exertion, get to the next door quickly, like the numbers game. But let me just tell you, when you have a 1 in 2 close rate, like you don't care about the numbers because you just know that the next person's going to buy. And how do you know that? It's because like I'm just so good at talking to someone per their needs. I already know why the service is good. Now I just need to make it good for them. It's like everything changes. Erin, takeaways?
Mostly, I guess, working on becoming an expert. I
Okay.
feel like I have a little bit more time with that since I'm young, but I know I can get there. And like, I know if I'm on the doors and I hear those, I'm back to the next door.
Yeah. And that doesn't necessarily mean that they don't trust you with those questions because they could ask them for a number of different reasons. But like specifically when people are just drilling you with like very specific questions about expertise, that's just an indication that they don't trust you quite yet. So that would be actually a good reason to just be looping back and think like, I don't have trust yet. I got to keep going to the next thing. Full takeaways.
I like that actually a lot, but I think it's more for sitting in here. I've sold for like a couple years, and I think a lot of us have. But some of this is like a refresher to me.
Yeah.
And you can teach to us, but you can't learn it, of course.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think like from an expert perspective, like competence is competence. If you don't understand like what you're learning,
Yeah.
and if, I don't think if you don't understand it to the point where somebody else, you're not going to be very good.
100,000,000,000%. And that's really the key, especially because you got experienced reps, or most of you guys that are experienced are leading a team, or at least helping people that you manage during the summer. And so this is very important. It is not about necessarily being an expert. You have to work your way towards that. It's about being perceived as an expert. And that has nothing to do with the facts that you know about bugs or entomology or anything like that. It's like your ability to communicate expertise. That's all we care about, at least at the surface level. But of course, you need to have that backed up by like truly caring and actually intending to be an expert and learning. Yeah, constantly. Adam, takeaways? Or did I already start with you? Sorry. I'm a little brain dead today, guys. Okay, cool. That's what I got for today, guys. We're gonna focus next time on different scenarios and how to do intel gathering, and then how to transition that into value prop, giving the presentation. Is this so far okay? Am I spending too much time on the strategy or the underlying stuff? Again, I'm tailoring this more to, this is like way less tailored towards you guys rookies, more towards experienced reps. But I just say from like the rookie perspective, make sure that you just focus on the very basics of the very basic purpose that you're trying to accomplish, and then what you can do every single time that most likely accomplishes that first, so that you have the habit of it. Then once you have the habit and you can stand still, or you can be confident, open your body language, now you can have good eye contact, for example. Now you move on to more specific things like, why am I saying this? Why am I saying that? Is it even meaningful? Okay, cool. Thanks, guys. Yep.